how did you get from there, thinking that maybe you were weak, which you're absolutely not, but I know the feeling, to being here now, about to stand on the UTMB start line and being like ready.
It was a long road, and I feel like I'm still on that road. I mean, you walk away from a race like that and I just felt like a total fraud. I stand for, like, you don't DNF no matter what. Like, you have a compound fracture, like, you walk that out. Like, sorry, you're still breathing fine, right? Your heart's working, like, you can walk it out. And so there are circumstances in life and training and injury and whatever it is that are going to make that confidence fade or grow stronger. And I think as long as you have that vision of where you want to be and you keep pushing towards it, like, the confidence is easier to return to.
Yeah. Yo, welcome to BeRad the podcast. I'm your host, Kat Bradley.
What's up? I'm Carson Magoon, and together we produce this radical show.
Yeah, that's right. This week, we interviewed Sabrina Stanley, who I've admired for a really long time. I admire her for the obvious reason. She's one of the best ultra runners in the world. Holds and Nolan's 14, FKT, has been a hard rock champion, Diagonal Day Food champion, top 10 at UTMB, just to name a few. And we actually interviewed her right before her top 10 performance at UTMB. And UTMB is a long time goal that she hopes to win one day. And I admire her, obviously, for her stout results, but also because she's a fierce competitor. She doesn't back away from what she says, and she's caught some flack in the running industry before for being so intense. But why? Why did she catch that flack? And I love her because she stayed true to that, and she's just as fierce as she was the first day she came on the scene.
Yeah, it was a really cool conversation between you two. I'd say you both are like equally fierce in different ways, but also kind of the same way. So, it was really captivating conversation.
Yeah, she was so fun to talk to. I'm so inspired by her, and it makes me want to shoot for my own big goals with the same ferocity that she does. And this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Delta G Ketones. I have been loving them, as we talked about in the last episode, for my recovery and my cognition, especially before really long days on the computer. But recently, I've been noticing a huge difference on my runs, which it took me a little while to notice because I wasn't doing super long runs. But yesterday, I came home from a hard 19-mile run, and the first thing that I said when I walked in the door was that taking these ketones, these performance ketones, helped.
Yeah, you were talking really highly of it, and I was pretty stoked to hear that, it kept you moving and grooving through your whole workout, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, usually I have a pretty major energy dip around mile 9. This is a loop that I do all the time, and it's a pretty difficult loop with about 3,000 feet of elevation gain, and I always try and run it kind of fast because I'm training for a fast 100K right now. And in this section, I always bonk. Despite taking gels, I was about 180 grams of carbohydrates in already at 9 miles, which I always am, and I always still bonk because it's just a hard run. And this time I noticed while doing a hard interval at the end of the run, I was like, oh my gosh, my energy levels have been stable the whole time.
Yeah, these things are super efficient. You absorb them super easily, and you can absorb them easily when it's super hot, which is usually super hot, that loop that you do, right?
Oh yeah, it ends like on this crazy highway section that under direct sunlight, it's so humid, it's so hot, and it's hard, but I also ran it 10 minutes faster yesterday, so
wow.
Stay tuned to
nice.
see.
Good work.
Thank you. I was pretty stoked about that.
It's been helping me too with office work. Sometimes sitting at a computer for more than like an hour is really hard for me, but I cranked out like 4 hours at the computer the other day, just working on I have a bunch of different jobs right now, but it was really helpful. It helped me stay engaged and energized throughout the entire work sesh. So I gotta say, I can tell a difference, and I only took it one time because you let me.
I know, I'm hoarding it. There's only so much they give me, so.
Please, Kat, can I have some more?
Maybe, if you behave.
It's like I gotta behave for the next round of ketones, but Delta G ketones.
Yeah, this is my favorite. This is the performance and this is the health. These are the two ketones that I take the most often. You can hit up the website in our show notes to take the Delta G ketone quiz to figure out what type of ketones work best for you.
Just down there.
Yeah, just click the link.
The link. Click that link.
And let us know what you think of Delta G ketones. Enjoy the episode, guys. Woo!
All right, shoots.
Shoots.
Hey, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, action. Welcome to the BeRad podcast. I am your host, Kat Bradley, and with me I have Sabrina Stanley, a professional ultrarunner, hard rock champ, maybe the 2023 UTMB champ. Who knows? We'll find out this week. I love this question because, you know, that's how I would describe you. Someone who's been a fan for a long time. We're friends. Like but we haven't gotten to spend that much time together. But so, like, how would you describe yourself to this community, or like if you're introducing yourself to someone, and like, what do you do for work?
I'm a trail runner. I think, like, to describe myself, I'm passionate. I can be quirky and funny and enjoy a good sense of humor. I like to have a good time, and I think people don't see that in the trail community as much because it is, I mean, I enjoy it, but it is still a job, and I want to take my job seriously, and I want to be good at my job, and so I show up and I work. And so outside of work, I feel like I'm maybe a different person than I show at work.
Yeah.
And I just wish the trail running community was able to see that side of me a little bit more. And maybe that's my own fault because I don't express it as well through my social media either.
It's hard to do. I feel that way too. Like, especially, you know, Carson, my husband, has known me since high school and then saw me in the trail world. And it's like, wow, you have two different personalities. But you kind of have to be that way sometimes.
It's hard to be multidimensional on social media too. And then, like, in interviews when, like, all you're talking about is running.
Totally.
And the answers are serious. Like, you can't, it's harder to show that those personality depths.
Absolutely. And then also with, like, sometimes on social media, there's do's and don'ts for, like, sponsors and stuff. Like, and so that, I think, can alter personalities a little bit. Well, maybe you'll get to show some of your personality today. But speaking of, you've always been one of my favorite runners to follow. Like, I remember when we did Western in 2017 together, you were third, right?
Yeah.
Third, yeah. And I remember seeing you at camp. And I just finished, like, with a big group, and then you came, like, right after us, just smoking by. I was like, who is this chick? And then, you know, then I saw some interviews from you, and I was following you since then. And something I've always admired is that you're just, like, unabashedly confident and bold, which I think is so cool. And your self-belief is so deserved, but it's been, you know, you've had it even before the results came. And, you know, where do you draw that from? Because that's hard at the pro level to, you know, to hold steady to.
Yeah, I don't view it as much as, like, self-confidence, and I get that feedback a lot, but I think it's just, I had a dream and I had goals and I wanted to accomplish them, and I don't feel shy sharing those goals. And then the feedback I receive when I share those goals is like, wow, that's confident. And it's like, I don't know. It's just more like, I think that I'm capable of doing this, and I'm going to try to do it the best I can. And maybe I can't, but I would rather, like, put everything into it and verbally express that and, like, put it into the universe. And so far, it's worked out pretty well for me. And so, I guess, like, positive reinforcement, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. And I think confidence is good. I don't think, when I say that, it's something that, you know, I struggle with my own confidence. And I think it reflects in my performances. I think, you know, on the days that I'm feeling really confident, I perform well. And then if something happens, and it's, you know, it never has anything to do with my fitness, you know, and it can be hard at the pro level, but you have held so steady to it. And I think especially on the women's side, it's something that a lot of pro women struggle with. And it doesn't, you know, maybe it does for you, but it doesn't seem to, like, no matter what, you know, and there's good races and bad races for everyone in this sport, but no matter what, you hold steady to, you know, your dream, which we both know is attainable. And so where, like, how do you do that even when it's hard?
I think there are low points for sure. It's not, like, nonstop belief, I guess. I mean, there are points where you doubt, like, I DNF'd Grand Raid. It was my first ever DNF where I took myself out of the race. It wasn't a time clock. It wasn't whatever. It was, I'm pulling myself at this point. And so there are points where, like, confidence goes out the window. And then that next morning, you're like, who am I? And that's not what I stand for. And why in that moment did I let myself slip? And so I don't want people to think that it's this constant thing. Like, it comes and it goes, and there are circumstances in life and training and injury and whatever it is that are going to make that confidence fade or grow stronger. And I think as long as you have that vision of where you want to be and you keep pushing towards it, like, the confidence is easier to return to.
Yeah.
And especially if you're putting in the work and continue, like, it's just that drive to get to where you want to be.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, like, what happened at Grand Raid? What was different about that race? And then how'd you pull yourself out of it after?
Yeah. I hate to be disappointing here, but I do not enjoy talking about it.
No problem.
Yeah. So, like, without, like, going into too many details, so I was supposed to run UTMB last year, got COVID Monday before the race. Immediately thought, like, before UTMB even happened, I knew I wasn't running it that week. I had reached out to Grand Raid and said, I want to run this race.
Yeah.
Like, I maybe wasn't in the right mindset. I was, like,
Totally.
almost a little frantic. Like, I need to get in the next competitive race I can that is super challenging. And that was Grand Raid. And so I returned home. I wouldn't say my training was spectacular after that. I was still recovering from COVID and like, almost forced this event to happen.
Yeah.
And that shows in my race. And the event itself brought me to my knees in a way that I have not had happen, even including Nolan's. And so, I got to the 100K point, and I decided that my body, it was not, like, safe to continue. They told me I had to walk out. It was something like 4 miles and 2,500 feet again, which seemed like impossible at the time.
Yeah.
So I said, if you're going to make me do that to physically get off this course, then I might as well just go to the next aid station where I can drop.
Yeah.
And so I started hiking, and it was like another 18 miles. I really should have dropped at 65 or whatever it was. So I made it somewhere in the 80s, and now it's the middle. I was going to drop in daylight, made it to, like, the middle of the night or some point of darkness. And the whole way, those 18 miles, I don't know how many hours it took me. A very, very long time.
Yeah.
I was going through every possible scenario of, like, am I the weakest person in the world for dropping or making this decision? It was multiple hours of questioning if I'm making the right choice to drop. And then periods of, I'm going to pull this shit together and, like, I'm going to make it happen. And it was, I cannot over exaggerate how long that night was for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I pulled the plug, and I don't know how I got to this point in the conversation, if I'm answering the question or not.
But, like, yeah, totally. And then that's like, I've been there, and I think, all of us have. And then, you're here now, just under a year later, and, like, you're back, and you're so fit, and you're back with that ferocity that, you know, all your fans love you for. And, how did you get from there, thinking that maybe you were weak, which you're absolutely not, but I know the feeling, to being here now, about to stand on the UTMB start line and being like ready.
It was a long road, and I feel like I'm still on that road. I mean, you walk away from a race like that, and I just felt like a total fraud. I stand for, like, you don't DNF no matter what. Like, you have a compound fracture, like, you walk that out. Like, sorry, you're still breathing fine, right? Your heart's working, like, you can walk it out. And so, I felt like the whole trail running community, totally in my head, was like, what? Like, I don't know. It's like a scam artist almost, like, clearly she doesn't stand by what she speaks about, and she chose to DNF. And so, that on top of the being so mentally and physically prepared for UTMB and then not being able to run it. And it's so hard to get to, I felt I was in the best shape of my life ever heading into UTMB, and to have that, like, to work that hard and then have the rug pulled out from under you. That last winter, I really, really struggled. And then I just, like, get to the spring and start racing again. And so I took 2 months off and did a local 50K in, like, a small town in North Carolina, and it went fairly well. And then I wanted to qualify for UTMB, and so I did a race in Snowdonia in Wales, and I felt like I only pushed to, like, third gear, which I feel good about. I didn't risk blowing up in any way. I felt very controlled the entire time. Earned my spot into UTMB this year. Did a race July 2nd, another small one in Washington State, a 50 miler, just to, like, mid-training block test the legs, and it went really well. And so here I am. Like, I don't feel completely, like, back on the horse yet. I think if and when I run UTMB well this week, then I'm like, okay, like, I'm back and I can do a 100 miler well. And, like, I really want to push to, like, fifth gear and, like, feel those limits again and risk blowing up and climb my way out of that, or risk blowing up and, like, making it last right until the finish line.
Yeah. That's the way to run this race. Yeah. Yeah. And you know how to do that. That's super cool. Like, I asked, you know, I've come off, I feel like a fraud. You know, I had this giant hip injury that I, literally, like, on my last race at Tarawera at mile 85, I fainted on the course. Like, I passed out a week before the wedding because I was taking so much ibuprofen, which I never do during races, but it just got to the point. And it's tough and it's hard to, and, like, still I'm coming back. I'm, like, healthy. It's functioning for the first time, but I haven't raced since. And it's hard.
Ibuprofen will fuck you up.
Ibuprofen
to say that.
But yeah. This is a totally free
especially
podcast.
Especially in a 100 miler.
Oh my God. But it was just getting to the point where I was like, I can't fucking DNF, you know? And, and I was like, I'm still fine. I can, like, I'm running as fast as I can. If I can, like, keep moving, then I will. And then literally a week before Carson and I got married, I passed out in the course and he had to, like, lift me up. And then I was like, I can keep going. Yeah. And then I passed out again. Yeah. And then, like, I literally don't remember. But it's tough. And, like, that, even then I look back at that, which, like, you know, probably couldn't have kept going. Like, I admit, you know.
But you're questioning in the moment, you can't. But you get, like, however many hours removed and you're like,
like 6 hours.
Yeah, I should have been, like, bionic woman and trudged on no matter what.
But, you know, it's cool to hear that, like, for everyone, it happens. Yeah. You know, and
well, then, like, so, side story.
Yeah.
I got an Airbnb right next to the finish line because in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to do so well at this race, and I was there by myself, and I'm going to finish and be not able to walk. Like, I'm going to be so messed up, and I want my Airbnb to be as close to the finish line as possible. And so then at Grand Raid, every time somebody finishes, it's like bands and fireworks and, like, it's like insanity. And so for 24 hours after my drop, every few minutes, I just heard, like, explode, like, the sliding glass doors did not cut any sound. It was just like the universe just, like, rubbing in my face.
Totally. I feel
hours.
You. Like, yeah, that's awful.
And then the flights home, everything. You're just like, what is...
Yeah. And you've got so much time to think about it, you know, when you should have been destroyed, you know, and we learn to love that feeling after, even if we don't hit our goals finishing, like, we learn to love that feeling of just, like, pure exhaustion, you know. It's tough. Yeah.
I had to get out of it. So when I had a layover in Paris and my flight got canceled, so I had 2 nights in a hotel, and the second night I booked an Airbnb experience and, like, went and did a speakeasy tour in Paris. We're, like, out of the trail running world. Nobody knows me. And, like, I just, like, had a few drinks, and, like, the other people on the tour happened to be Americans, and we just, like, traveled around to all these speakeasies in Paris, and I was like,
and no one knows.
Just like, nobody knows a fuck who you are or what just happened this last weekend. And it was really a nice break mentally from like being on a flight and just like replaying that race over and over and over.
That's so awesome. And I'm sure like it was just such a gift because when you go home, you go to Silverton, right?
Yeah.
Is that where you were? Yeah. And it's just there's reminders everywhere of your goals there.
Yeah, for sure. I had to get like out of my personal space in a way, and I made myself start going to yoga 3 times a week in like a group class instead of doing it by myself like I've always done. I made myself go to the community basketball league every Wednesday night. Like I just had to find community in spaces that weren't related to running and really shift my mindset to others and not about myself and like all my goals and my failures, or like you just have to change your mind.
Totally. And do you think that's something that you're even after successful performances that you'll continue to make a priority?
Yes. Yeah. Because like I had it in the past because I was like so in a messed up way, almost like David Goggins about it. Like, you have to like be hard, motherfucker. And like, if you stray for a second, like the rest of your life's ruined. And no, I mean, I enjoyed the basketball league so much. And same with the yoga. Like it breaks you out of the monotony of like treadmill, yoga by yourself, strength training by yourself. Like everything is so, as an ultra runner, and especially in a town like Silverton, in the winter, it can be very isolating. And when you're not meeting like coworkers essentially, or just doing Zoom calls, you have to have human interaction.
Yeah. And it's something too, Carson and I just moved back home to Hawaii full time. We'll still be like spending time out in Colorado in the summers, but we moved to a tiny town, Pupukea, where it's like same thing, all the trainings by myself. And then when I was injured, all of a sudden I realized like, oh, I don't see anyone ever.
No friends.
I have no friends. And
at least in the vicinity.
Yeah, exactly, in the vicinity. And it's like I've missed out on all these opportunities to make friends because I've been so focused, and like is that a superpower? I don't think so. I think it's like being focused is great, but like, it'll definitely break you eventually.
Exactly. Yeah. At some point it stops being a positive for your training and it actually starts taking away from it, I think. 'Cause
totally.
Like, your mental energy isn't healthy.
Yeah. It's like what we were talking about before. And I say this over and over again because I heard this and it clicked in my head like, oh shit, that's why I keep underperforming. But it's, willpower is a battery. When you drain it, you can't give anything to the race. And so if you're draining all your willpower and you're not doing stuff to like charge that battery, you're going to like, no matter how fit you are, you're not going to be able to go to the well the same way you would be able to. Speaking of going to the well, like I'd say if I could give you one word to describe who you were, if someone was like, oh, Sabrina, who is she? I'd be like, she's fierce. I'd say ferocity, like no matter what. Like I've heard you joke around, like they're fierce, funny jokes, and everything you do is fierce, including racing. And like speaking of, other hobbies, running, it seems like was a goal that came to you later. How did you channel that ferocity before running?
Well, I played, so like I have 4 brothers and a sister. So growing up, I feel like there's just a lot of that energy in the house. And then my dad put us all in team sports. So basketball, volleyball, fast pitch. It's where I spent the majority of my time. I went to community college and like did it even there. And then after that, I traveled around a little bit, landed in Colorado. And once I was there, I just started running. I mean, I'd been running other places, but I started running trails in Colorado. And I think that was a really good outlet for me. Yeah. I went through a bit of a party phase. Like I like to do things in extremes. So like,
yeah, totally.
And I had never done that before. And so, I feel like I let a lot of steam off that way when I was in Breckenridge. And then from there, I would say work a little bit and kind of tested the waters, like taking maybe a more traditional like career route, but wasn't nearly as happy. And so focused more on trail running and kind of found my way.
Yeah. Was there ever a time, I think something like that, it can burn you up if it's not used. Like for me, I literally started running because I was too much in school. Like I was like, getting in trouble for truancy and like smoking too much weed and like being just and having too much energy and getting in trouble at school. And then I started running. I'm like, oh, this is a energy problem. I have too much of it. You know? Was there ever a time where that ferocity like burned you up and then you found that balance again and then you were able to channel it into something good?
Yeah. I've always been like a people pleaser, straight A type.
Yeah.
Like I'm very like goal driven and want to do everything like the best I can and make other, like my boss, I just like want to be the best little worker / student / athlete I can be. And so that's how I've always channeled it. I don't think I sound kind of boring. I've never it's never brought me trouble in that way. I've like stayed the path. And like, honestly, when I lived in Breckenridge, that was like my only, we'll call it party phase. Like I never did like a college or like even high school. Like I was a really good kid. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it has brought me.
Not unfortunately, fortunately.
Yeah, I know, but like sometimes life experience is good. Sometimes like testing the waters can be healthy.
I don't know. This is a lot better than this.
Well, I would say, but like this passion or this like fire, like I get really passionate about topics, and like I think that there's a ethical way to do things, and I think obviously everybody should follow that. And so when people don't, or I see people taking advantage of systems, maybe I'm a little bit more outspoken, and I don't necessarily regret that, but I think that it does bring me some flack that like I didn't expect, because I'm like, of course everybody thinks it should be fair for women. And so then when you speak out about that and people are like, it is fair, you guys have 20%, and it's like, that's not fair though.
Yeah, totally. And like, so, why do we have 20%, you know?
Right. We're like UTMB, I heard yesterday the field is less than 10% women. And like that needs to change.
That's horrendous, especially because I'm sure like 7% of that 10 is like elite athletes with a lot of opportunity, you know?
Right.
You know,
so there's I'm sorry, I might be taking your
podcast. No, don't, please.
But I listened to a podcast and they were talking about a little bit about, it was like a very small piece about females in the sport. And Stephanie Case had a quote regarding UTMB, and it said when they were discussing, they used to only recognize like the top 5 women and top 10 men or whatever it was, and their argument was if we went 10 deep for the women, then we would be including like hobbyist runners, and it's not as serious anymore. And Stephanie Case said, well, you can either be a mirror to the world of how it is, or you can be a door that we can walk through and we can advance. And so UTMB changed it, and they started recognizing the top 10 men and women, and now look how competitive it is for women.
Yeah.
And like they changed that to a certain extent. And so I just like love that thought that
totally
you can argue that, the women aren't applying. And so like their percentage that apply, that like we need to keep it equal for like whatever they're showing up as. But if we showed them that we want them to be here and they are included, instead of like keeping a cap on their registrants, then I think that they would show up in droves in the future.
Totally. And like, look, as you said, look at what it's done.
Yeah.
You know, every year the women's field is as competitive as the men's, even if the total field isn't as deep, you know, women are showing up. And
I mean, we have women finishing the top 10 now.
I know.
Like overall.
Totally. Yeah. And it's going to continue to happen.
Without a doubt.
You know, and it is a shame that that's still the thought, and you hear it over and over again, because you're right. It doesn't happen unless there's a door. You know, you think about it, if you see only 5 women on the podium, then it's like, well, fuck, like, I can't be one of those 5. Right. You know, you see 10, it's like, oh, it's the same. This is something that everyone can do. And,
like, there's just, like, more opportunity, like, for those women who are on the edge. Like, maybe I can break into that 10. If I have a great day, I can be there.
Totally.
And I think it inspires a lot more women. Not that they need to be inspired, but it encourages them, or like shows them how achievable their dream could be. Like it's a little bit more in grasp, and makes it a more competitive field as a whole.
Exactly. And like the more competitive the women's field is, the more examples. You know, the examples there are for people who are trying to get into it.
You don't have just like that one, what is it? Like I'm blanking, like archetype of the female runner. You have, because men have all these different personalities. Like you have Killian, you have Jim Walmsley, you have Francois, and they all are like very differently driven competitively and personalities and like how they come across. And like we have Courtney DeWalter, and then like on that scale, you know what I mean? It's hard to like break through. You have to be the best of the best, and there's not a lineup. And so yeah, if we just represent women better, you can have little girls who are attracted to like Anna Frost, who it was for me, or Sally McRae, and like women like that who just, they have different personalities that you're attracted to,
and you see themselves in them.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
see like, oh, I'm not like Courtney, so like I could never be this.
Exactly.
You know?
Like there can be women out there who like, I don't know, love doing their fingernails and like run in a full face of makeup and wear skirts and pink, and you know what I mean? Like women can be athletes and be feminine, and I think that there could be definitely a wider variety of representation in our sport of women, and that's not on women, that's on the media and races to help us show that.
It's so interesting. So I just was in a podcast right before this, and the argument came up, and like it was a good point, and I argued against it, but it was by a guy we're like, well, maybe it's on the women to like go out there and with cameras and GoPros and like film the women's race, and which I think is awesome, and that's an awesome sentiment. But what's missing is that the men got it without that, you know, without them banding together and like, we are going to do this because it's good for the sport. And it's like a huge time commitment and a huge financial commitment to go out there with gear and film. And it's something that like, hell yeah, I think maybe like that might be the only way, but there's only so many media spots. It's in like a race like this, you know.
Traditionally people hiring the media are men, and the people who are given the opportunities to produce the media or whatever are typically men. And so with less education, they are getting these opportunities, or less experience, men are giving jobs to men.
Yep.
And those men are advancing and getting more skills, and they're not going to turn around and offer it to a female. I mean, it does happen, but typically, like,
and that's why everyone's like, oh, there's no women photographers. I'm like, why? And that's why. You know? It's
and so, once there will, I think, be a wave of it coming. But right now, the people with the power are the ones who need to help us along the way.
Yep.
And the people with the power are the men right now.
It's
hate
true.
saying that, but like, facts are facts. And so, like, we need to help women get that experience. And then those women who get the experience can't have the attitude that like they enjoy being a part of a boys club, or that I had to go through this shit to get here, and so like you should have to too.
Yeah.
There has to be the mentality that I made it here, and I'm going to reach out my hand to you, and I'm going to help you up as well. And yeah, I think that's like kind of my stance, not to bring Hard Rock into it, is like, I feel like went through a messed up system to be a part of Hard Rock, and then you look back and you see how it's ran, and you realize like this is not helping women, and like how can we help more women get into this, and how can I reach out my hand to them now that I am in the quote boys club. And so the women who get in the boys club and then are proud to be a part of the boys club, like that's a problem in our sport as well.
Yeah, and that's a problem everywhere. You know, I have found myself in jobs in my career changing myself to cater to the boys club to get advanced. And I was talking to my friend who works for a major media company in the outdoor world, and was saying that, she's been passed over for promotion after promotion, and she's brilliant. It like breaks my heart to see this. And then they were like, oh, she was promised this promotion, and then but because they were like going to try and bring more women voices into it, and then they ended up going with an outside hire that was, and the reason she was hired was said that like her personality vibed more with the culture of the people and the upper management, and that culture, like she realized, she was like, oh, that culture is like, she downplays her femininity, you know. And my friend, like, she's proud of it, you know, which we all should be, but it's just sad. It's sad that like, and I found myself doing that in jobs, like catering to that, the more masculine traits that I have. Like, and I grew up like a tomboy, you know. I wore like boys clothes till I was like 12, just because I was super active, and you know, and it was only in my adult life that I really learned to embrace. And when I was teaching and around a bunch of women, embrace my femininity. But I found that when I'm in like a room full of guys who determine my paycheck, then I find myself like leaning into those more masculine traits, which is I feel it takes a piece away from me every time I walk away.
Well, because if you show your emotion, if you show your passion, sorry, I'm messing this up, but like if you show that you are moved by something, then you're emotional. And if men do it, then they're passionate. Totally. And so it's just such a double standard. And then when women get in those positions of rooms of men, if they speak up, like they're outcasts from the group.
Or they're called so like bitchy.
Scary. Yeah, it's scary to speak up because then you lose your spot.
Totally. Or to like not even just to speak up, but like a lot of women who are in positions of power, just by giving direction and doing their job, they're called bitchy or snippy or
they're not a boss.
Bossy,
Yeah, they're not. Yeah,
they're not. It's not my boss. It's bossy. It's super difficult. So like, I don't want to spend too much time talking about how you cope with that, but like you and I have both been on ends of like speaking out for women's coverage and both been just slammed down, hardcore, and like that shut me up for a while, and it was tough.
It's intentional. I keep cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
I was gonna say it's intentional that they do that because other women are watching this, and when you speak out and then you get massacred online, that shows other women if you step out of line, you will get the same treatment, and so other women stay quiet, and it's like. It's so hard to...
Totally. And how did you cope with that? And then what would you say? What's like a message to women in the sport to like, how can we do better?
Yeah. I think it's like you grow from it and you learn, and it's not like the next day you are totally fine. I mean, social media sucks and people are going to say stuff on there and be keyboard warriors behind their backs and not put their names next to it. And at first, when I first experienced it on a level I hadn't before, was after Nolan's, and I went back and I took the FKT a second time, and a lot of people thought that was very unsportsmanship-like of me. And so when I did that, which like a male, I feel like he would have been...
They would have been like, yeah, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, all right, if that's how people are going to react to this, then I'm not going to change who I am, but you're not going to see who I am on social media. Yeah. Like, you don't get the privilege of seeing this quote unquote fierceness. Like, you don't get the privilege of knowing how bad I want it or how much work I've put into this. Like, you don't get to know me anymore. And I went through a long phase of that, of just like, I will put shallow posts up and say like one word or little quotes or something without actually talking about who I am. And then you get to a point where you're like, fuck that. Like, if people don't like me, they don't like me. This is how I'm going to be. And still, when I say things that are polarizing, like there is still a hard point of like, there's going to be a dip where people are going to say all the wrong things to you and like hope that they affect you in some way. And some of them do and some of them don't. And then you just grow from that and you realize your shield gets a little bit stronger. And the next time you say it, hopefully, it only affects you for a couple hours, and the next time a couple minutes. And like your skin gets thicker.
I feel like it's like being in an abusive relationship. It's you like, unless you hold steady to what you know is true, it can make you crazy and like question what you believe. I'm super disengaged with all the dramas in ultra running, but I follow, especially with the women, all the results. I saw you did Nolan's twice, and I was like, hell yeah, that's dope. That's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I don't know how she did it, but that's so cool. And I'm sorry to hear that there was any backlash on you just accomplishing a goal and doing like having some good healthy competition. But I'm sure that all, it's crazy, all the negative stuff. You're like, fuck, was that am I not a sportsman? Like,
because I think of myself as a champion for women. And so to be viewed as the opposite, that I went out and took another woman's record again, like, it felt like, am I the bad person here?
Totally.
Am I the villain? I don't like see it.
Yeah.
And like my rose colored glasses or whatever. And so, and then I think do a lot of soul searching and figure out what you stand for, and then learn just to, people are going to react however they're going to react.
Yeah. And I think that's really amazing. You know, we're running out of time here, and we could keep talking forever.
I know.
But I have 2 questions that I ask everyone, because it's different for everyone who's a high performer, and but there's always something. And you know, for you, you're an amazing athlete, but what I admire you most for is your mental game. And again, like everyone who's a top performer is like, just something a little different makes them click. And you know, what's the thing that makes you different, that you can draw from that, you know, why you're such a good athlete?
Yeah, I think everybody enjoys what they do, and like, so like there's a certain level that comes from that. Over the last few years, I've really tried to figure out like what my drive is. Why do I do this? What am I trying to accomplish? Like, is it for myself? Is it for others? And is it out of spite? Like, I'm gonna show you wrong, and like anybody who's ever done me wrong, like, you're gonna see how big of a star I'm gonna be. And I think in the last year, I've really thought about, like, love is the opposite of hate, or they say non-interest or whatever, but we're gonna say love is like the opposite of hate. And I really think, like, when I first started running, I was in high school, and I would get out of fast pitch practice and I would hit the track and I would do 3 miles. In the summers I would do 7, but in season I would just hit the track and start running 3 miles every day. And I used to picture my dad standing like on the baseball fence watching me run, and like anytime I felt tired, I'm like, he's like just sitting there like so proud of me, I'm sure. And it's like all in my head. And so over the last year, I would have probably answered differently a couple of years ago that I am doing it out of spite. Like, any company who ever said I wasn't good enough to sign, like when I was a nobody, like, watch me. And now I feel like I'm at a point where I can like look back and analyze, and what drives me even more is I want to show, maybe it's like a toxic or not a good thing a therapist could tell me, but like I want to show the people that love me, like, this is like my gift to you. Like, this is something I love, and I want you to be a part of it. And I want you, like, I want my mom to be able to tell people, like, my daughter's a UTMB champion. And like, I don't know, I just think that when I am at my healthiest mentally, my number one goal is to like have my dad be able to brag about me at work. Yeah. And so I think that's like my biggest like driving factor. And I want Adidas to be proud of me, and I want my teammates to be proud of me. And so I feel like very good about like the last year of like finding like the root of what makes me happy.
I think I don't think you need to talk to a therapist about that, because I got to tell you, that's love. And like, you talk to people who are at the top of the marathon game, you know, the Kenyans and Ethiopians, who are like, yeah, I did this for my family back home. I want them to be proud of me. I want them to see me and have like, you know, they can do something. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Like, hearing Michael Jordan talk about like, he would just like make up these stories in his head about like how this guy hated him or did something to him. And so like, that's why he had to win the game. And like, I've definitely been in that like toxic loop, but I think it makes you so unhappy in training. To compete out of spite is not a good place to be.
No, and that's what'll burn you out, because it's not happy. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it's draining. Yeah. So competing out of love, I think, is way healthier.
Yeah, totally. So last one. What is something that you're proud of that, you know, your fans wouldn't know of, that you don't talk about in podcasts usually?
Oh, man, you have a lot of really good hard questions.
Score.
Oh, shoot. Oh, I feel like I'm failing right now.
You're not. It can be anything. I can give you one. Let me see.
Something I'm proud of. And like, they might not know. I'm a really big reader. I love to read. I don't know if I'm like proud of that, but like,
can be.
That's something I enjoy doing a lot. I'm a big animal lover. I like worked at a vet for 5 years, and just like, it was one of the best jobs I ever had. And so I think like,
that's pretty amazing.
But I feel like when I'm telling people this, like, if you have to tell people you're a compassionate person, and like, Maybe there's a reason that you have to tell them that. So
no, I think
yeah.
I think that's a great one. Like, you're a compassionate person. It's clear. It's in like everything that you've said in this interview, and I think that's definitely something to be proud of. I knew actually you worked at a vet and that you love dogs. Yeah, me too.
Okay, actually, we'll go back. One of my most proud things of life is I have a girlfriend. Her name is Melissa, and we have maintained like the best friendship since 7th grade. And like, she is my person, and I feel like it's so hard to find that person and maintain them and keep them in your life, no matter what she's going through or I'm going through. And so, as like small as it may seem, I would say like that relationship is so special to me, and I cherish it so much. And like, that's my one like thing of like,
that's incredible. I have been trying to maintain my friendships better because I get I'm not good at the phone. Yeah, it's hard, and everyone is so spread out these days that like it's easy to just like get in your own little tunnel. So that is something that I have been actively working on. So that's cool. Awesome. Well, any last words?
I'm gonna share a story about you. So I first heard of you when I was racing. It was a race in Sean O'Brien 100K to get my golden ticket to Western. Mm-hmm. And I ran with somebody that you knew at the time, and he was telling me all about you and how amazing you were. And I had never heard of you, and I was like, whatever. Like, I'm going to get to Western, and like, I'm not even going to know this chick. And so I'm running Western, and about like 20-ish miles in, I stopped to pee in the woods. And I see you as I'm squatting, like running past me. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not worried. I'm going to catch her. It's like so early in the race. And I still kick myself for taking that pee. I'm like, what if I hadn't peed? I was on the trail when she passed me and I could catch her, which I wouldn't have. You beat me by like over an hour and a half. But yeah, and so that was like my first ever getting to know you was at Western, like kind of. And then when I met you the next time, I feel like had a rough start. We had a few drinks together, and I feel like instantly bonded, and
yeah, totally.
We're like, oh, I get her now, like completely. And I'm so happy that we went out for drinks that night, and
me too.
You're the best.
That was great. Right back at you. I'm honestly so excited for your UTMB.
Thank you.
Got such a fan in me from now till if you don't win this year, I know you will. So
I appreciate
really stoked.
it. Yeah, maybe we'll run it together next year.
Yes, let's do it. Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, next. Let's do this. All right. Cool. That was fun. That was like one of the most fun.
You look around.